God builds a house through David and Solomon. David becomes king of all Israel. After King Saul's death, the people of Judah come to David and anointed him king over all of Israel. He was 30 years old when he began his reign as king. King David and his men captured Jerusalem from the Jebusites by crawling through a water tunnel into the city. He made Jerusalem the capital of his kingdom and built a palace there. David brings the ark to Jerusalem. Jerusalem became the capital of the kingdom of Israel. David brought the ark of the covenant into the city with joyful singing and dancing, like a holy parade. David danced in the procession so that all the people would rejoice as the presence of God came into their city. David was so filled with emotion that he wanted to build a great temple to house the ark in which God's presence dwelled. David wanted the ark to sit in a beautiful building instead of a tent. A messenger from God informed David that he would be given a son who would build this temple. Then the worship of God would move from the tabernacle of Moses at Shiloh to Solomon's temple in Jerusalem. For David's faithfulness, God made a covenant with him. God did not ask David to build a house for him. Instead, God wanted to build a house for David. At the beginning of salvation history, or God's story, God made a covenant with Abraham, promising to make his name great through countless descendants through whom God would bless all the earth. Now God made a covenant with his anointed king, David, to establish a royal kingdom that would be known as the House of David. One of David's descendants would be God's own son, Jesus, the promised Messiah, who would bring salvation to the world. David sins and repents. David ruled as a good king for a long time. Once, however, while his armies were away fighting, David fell in love with another man's wife. Her name was Bathsheba. David took her into his palace and arranged to have her husband killed in battle. When David recognized the evil of his sins of murder and adultery, he wholeheartedly repented or asked for forgiveness. He was terribly sorry for what he had done, and he longed for a chance to be close to God again. God knew that David's heart was changed, and God forgave David for his sins. David wrote many psalms in the Bible, including one that shows us his repentant heart. Create in me a clean heart, O God, and put a new and right spirit within me. Then David married Bathsheba, and they had a son named Solomon. Solomon is anointed king and asks for wisdom. David had other sons, but he assured Bathsheba that her son Solomon would be made the next king. When David was very old, he had Zadok the priest and Nathan the prophet blow their trumpets to announce David's decision about Solomon as his heir. Then they led Solomon on David's donkey to a special place where they anointed him with oil as the king to sit on David's throne. The people were very happy about the announcement, and they rejoiced greatly for their new king. As King Solomon's royal power was established, God came to him in a dream and asked him what gift he would like to receive. Solomon answered that he would like the gift of wisdom more than anything else. God was pleased with Solomon's request and gave him wisdom to tell the difference between right and wrong. King Solomon is attributed with writing many wise sayings like those found in the book of Proverbs, such as, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and do not rely on your own insight. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make straight your paths. Be not wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord and turn away from evil. It will be healing to your flesh and refreshment to your bones." Solomon builds a temple for the Lord. King Solomon wanted to build a house for the Lord, a temple that would be suitable for the Lord God. Therefore, when the country was at peace and the people felt secure, Solomon started building a beautiful temple in Jerusalem on Mount Moriah, where Abraham and Isaac had made a sacrifice long ago. After the temple was complete, the priests brought the Ark of the Covenant and placed it in the inner sanctuary of the temple. 2 golden angels, or cherubim, sat atop the ark with their wings spread open as a throne for God. Just As the glory of God had filled the tabernacle in the wilderness, so did the glory of God fill the temple in Jerusalem, which became the center of worship for all of Israel. Then God renewed the covenant that he had made with Solomon's father, David. He told Solomon that his kingdom would last forever, but that King Solomon and all of the people of Israel would need to obey God and to keep his commandments. God warned them not to worship other gods because this new house would be destroyed if they turned away from the Lord God. King Solomon was happy with the temple that he had built the Lord. Then he built more buildings and walls around many cities in Israel. Finally, Solomon had so much money and so much land that he became known as not only the wisest king, but also the richest. Though Solomon was a good and wise king who built the temple for the Lord, at the end of his life he did not act so wisely and kept too much wealth for himself. He also let many of his wives worship false idols. Like his father, David, he wasn't perfect, but both he and his father foreshadowed the perfect king God had promised would come to Israel someday. That king, of course, is Jesus.